Today is Thursday, October 2nd, 2014. My name is Mary Smart. I have the privilege of interviewing Robert Ritzen, Bob Ritzen, the chaplain at Frasier Meadows Retirement Community. And he's going to share his story of the 2013 flood. The interview is for the Marie Rogers Oral History Program. The interview is being filmed by Don Dick. First, Bob, can you tell us your age and where you were born and a bit about your background?
Well, let's see, Mary. I'm 59 years old, and I was born in Fremont, Nebraska. Moved to Colorado in '82 to start working at a church in Longmont. And after a little over 20 years at the church, I decided that I would like to go back into chaplaincy, where most of my training was. So I worked at hospice care of Boulder and Broomfield counties, which is now true community care, for a little over 10 years. And one of the wonderful things about working in that organization was Frasier Meadows Retirement Community was one of the communities that I got to serve. So I cared for patients and families here for a little over 10 years, and always thought so much of Frasier Meadows, thought it gave such excellent care. I really appreciated the fact that it was a continuous care retirement community. It has independent living, assisted living, and then skilled nursing as well as rehabilitation within the skilled nursing. So definitely continuous care from independent living all the way through even hospice care if that's needed.
Can you share a little bit about the tremendous events of the flood and your participation particularly in that monumental time frame?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it will be something I will never forget. I will have to admit, I always saw Frasier Meadows as almost a fortress. A large, strong, well-built facility, and it was something that I really never dreamed would happen here. That Wednesday, when it started raining so hard, I was teaching a class up in the chapel, actually, and our attendance was down a little. We had opened the class up to the community, and our attendance was down a little because of the tremendous rain going on at that time. But you know, I've lived in Colorado since '82, and sure, we have rain, but never that much. So I really wasn't even worried about it. But I noticed that our roof was starting to leak. Now here we have several flat roofs, and you know, not always the best, but because we don't have much rain here in this area, I wasn't too worried about it. But as I was closing up the chapel, I went back to the closet where the audio visuals are stored, and it was starting to rain. It was coming through the ceiling right into the audio visual closet and dripping on the electronics in there. So I got some lawn bags and actually draped them over the electrical equipment, and I thought, you know, that'll at least protect them. What I didn't know is some of our administrative staff was already here that night, that Wednesday night, and bailing out some of the patio wells on the garden level that were starting to fill with water. And I didn't know that, or I probably would have stayed, but I packed up my stuff and gave the other presenter a ride home because she had a small car, and she said, I don't know if I want to drive in this hard of rain. So I gave her a ride home. I have to admit I slept well that night. I thought, you know, nothing to worry about, this will blow over, but it didn't. And one of the things I noticed when I got up the next morning is it was still raining so hard and coming straight down. You know, usually here in Colorado when it rains, the wind blows and, you know, the rain comes in at an angle or even straight across sometimes, but just straight down. It just wasn't moving out. So I decided I'm going to go into work a little bit early, and got ready and drove from Longmont to Boulder, and standing water. You know, it was starting to get deep in some places even, but I drive a Jeep, And probably after this event, I will always drive a Jeep. But I was glad to be able to get to work. And then just noticed there'd been so much rain that there were buckets out in the hallways catching leaks. But where I really noticed it was over in assisted living, which is another wing of this facility. And as we were over there, we noticed that the flatter roof over there, there was rain starting to come in and soak the acoustic tile in the ceiling. And it actually got so wet in a couple places that the tiles started to fall, or at least break, in small pieces falling down, as well as the buckets placed around its strategic places. And as a staff, we decided, you know, this isn't good. Perhaps we should get these people to a safer place. And so early, I would guess it was late afternoon, early evening, we started taking beds apart and finding places to assemble those beds for people. So at least if they had to move, they could be in their own bed. So I don't know, I was just so impressed with the staff. Everyone just said, what can I do? Let's just rally and get these people moved. So we got all the tools we could get our hands on and started moving people out of assisted living. By this time, the rain was really coming down, and outside of assisted living, water was pooling, and it was actually coming in the doors, actually coming in the bottom of the doors. And so we knew we'd made the right decision to get them out of there. So we moved as many beds as we could. We set beds up wherever there was space, in one of the massage therapy rooms, in the staff break room, wherever we could set up beds, we set them up and moved people out of there. And I'm so glad we did that.
Can you?
I think one of the things that was so striking was just the attitude of the people. You know, when people move to Frasier Meadows, one of the things that they often say is, I'm not going to move again. This is going to be home. And I was just so impressed with the attitude of the residents who were just saying it was kind of an adventure. You know, we thought, okay, we're going to have to move out of here just to be safe, and really good attitudes. Well, I don't know. I thank God that we moved those people out of assisted living, because as we were working at getting everyone settled, someone yelled, and I can't even remember who, said, healthcare, which is our skilled nursing area, is flooding. And a wall of water came down through our parking lot outside of healthcare and just slammed into the facility. I don't know how else to put it. There are double glass doors outside of the healthcare entrance, 2 sets of them. And what happened was the water came in so quickly that water started filling inside those 2 double glass doors, and it looked like an aquarium with dirty water, filling with water. And of course that couldn't hold the water pressure. So water started coming in anywhere it could along that wall, and we knew we were going to be flooded out there. So we said, we have to get this first floor out of here as quickly as possible. And as we started getting people ready to move, this also included our memory care unit and people who were already in bed and sleeping, and we had to wake them up and get them out of there. And the other thing that happened then is our backup generators that provide electricity flooded out, and all of a sudden we were in the dark. As I think back on how we got everybody out of there, it's kind of a blur. But I do know that staff, just everyone rallied. Residents rallied. So many residents said, let me get all the flashlights I can find. Some of the staff said, where are we going to take all these people? Well, what we ended up doing was getting people in anything that would move. Some could walk, and we got them upstairs. Those that couldn't walk, we used wheelchairs or rolling walkers or anything we could to get them out of there. And some people were so confused. And can you imagine waking up in the middle of the night, having to put your feet down in water and move? But the water just kept rising. Some of our people slept in low beds, we called them. So in case they rolled out of bed or anything like that, they were very close to the floor with mats on them. Well, we became very concerned because the water was coming up to those mattresses, and we knew we had to get folks out of there. So as quickly as humanly possible, we started packing up people and taking them across the courtyard, which is in the center of the facility. But the problem was the courtyard was flooded. We had probably, I heard later, 18 inches to 3 feet of water, depending upon where we were in the courtyard. And so wheeling people across the courtyard when we couldn't see where we were going in the dark was just an amazing process. We would feel with our feet to make sure that we were on the sidewalk, because we knew if we, for instance, tip a wheelchair off the sidewalk, we'd be in trouble. We had some residents out there with flashlights to almost like airport landing, having you sight the lights and you head towards those lights, which helped tremendously. One of our nurses, Wendy, said, "I don't know who was out there, but there was someone I'd never seen before, and he had a bald head and a flashlight, and he was helping everyone, on where to go and where to turn and those things." She said, "I think it was an angel." I later told Walt that one of our nurses thought he was an angel, and he thought that was pretty hilarious and said he'd never been called that before. But he stepped in to do the work of an angel that night. Well, we got everyone out, without an injury, which I think was a miracle in itself. There were 108 beds in skilled nursing, and we got everyone out of there and across the courtyard without an injury. And one of the things that we did so many times because it was dark were head counts, just to make sure we didn't lose anyone, that we knew where everyone was. I'll never forget the work of one of our nurses, Tara. She got rolls of duct tape, which, you can fix anything with duct tape, but what she did with duct tape was she had 3 different colors of duct tape and would put duct tape on the person, write their name on it to help with head counts. Now you can imagine in skilled nursing too the importance of having medical records and medical orders and medications. And so while some of the staff were moving people, some of the other staff were trying so hard to move any equipment or records or medications they could out of skilled nursing to make sure everyone had what they needed. Now, one of the things that happened is we got across the courtyard and we got everyone into independent living in the garden level. And we thought, oh, everyone's safe. We got everyone over there and did another head count. Then we heard the garden level was starting to flood. So we packed everyone up again, went back out through the water in the courtyard, and went up the ramps that go from the courtyard up into the main level wellness center, which is another floor higher. So we moved everyone out of assisted living and everyone out of skilled nursing twice. It was an amazing process with no injuries, which I think is what's so amazing. We had one staff person that tweaked a shoulder a little bit, but when we looked at how many people we moved, we thought that was pretty amazing. I was so proud to be part of this staff, not just because of the amazing work that they did, but their attitude. Being, knowing that some of the residents were scared and confused, and just their compassion and the cheer that they said, oh, this is an adventure, we're going to do this, while, blankets and clothing were dragging through that dirty water to get them through the courtyard. It was an amazing process. Bedding everyone down. We used anything we could find so that people would have somewhere to sleep. In the wellness center, which is kind of almost like a gym with workout equipment, etc., there were lots of workout mats. And so the people that we took out of skilled nursing got a mat for a bed that night. And we used anything for blankets we could find, and pillows, towels and Afghans, anything we could find for pillows and blankets to make sure that everyone got to sleep. That night, I don't know what time it was. It must have been in the wee hours of the morning. Finally, everyone was down, and we didn't have to worry about shutting lights out. That was already done for us. It was dark. But residents coming out and saying, I have an extra bedroom, or what do you need? I have bottled water, how can we help? Everyone just rallied so much. It was, we were an isolated community. We were surrounded by water. The fire department and the police department could not get here, either because they were so busy saving lives, or the roads, they just couldn't get here. We have 3 underground parking garages here, and I believe it was 2 of them that filled to the top with water. I heard estimates of 30 million gallons of water that poured down into those parking garages. I have no idea, how much water. I don't know how that was estimated. But there was so much water in there that the cars started to float in those parking garages, and you could hear the cars bumping up against the roof of the parking garage as they started to float. And we lost 83 cars as they filled with water there. That included some staff cars as well as resident cars. Just to show a year later now, when it rains, I notice people don't use the parking garages as much anymore, and you can't find a place to park for a while here because everyone parks along the street or in the outdoor parking lots. It had a real impact on people. That night, as a staff, we would just keep meeting and saying, what do we need to do next? I guess I would say I was surrounded by heroes. I was surrounded by people who would do anything that was needed. We didn't have electricity, so if we would have to contact our own families or anything to let them know we were okay, we would just be able to talk for a very few seconds, and we'd want to shut our phones off so our batteries wouldn't all go dead. We had no idea how long we would be without electricity. Well, that night, some of us took cat naps wherever we could, and then would get up and check on our residents and see how they were doing. But one of the miracles was the next morning. After we had moved everyone out of the flooded areas, put them down to sleep wherever we could find a place. No electricity, but we had gas in the kitchen, and thank goodness we had gas ranges in there because everyone got oatmeal the next morning. One of the things that was so amazing was the staff, many couldn't drive in, several walked in. And so I went down to the wellness center to see where we had put so many people on mats to sleep. And there was the staff. Some had just walked in and were making sure everyone had their medications, getting them dressed with whatever they could find as best they could, making sure they had water and hot oatmeal. And their attitude was just so amazing. They were cheerful and encouraging and busy and dedicated. I just walked through there thinking, wow, what an honor it is to work at this place with this staff and these residents. It was just an honor. The heroes, the people that had to make snap decisions on what the best way was to do things. There were so many people who would be doing one thing and get called to another place and just drop what they were doing. I know one of the things when we were bringing people from the flooded courtyard up the ramps to the wellness center is so many people were confused and trying to get out of wheelchairs, etc., to stand up, and that just couldn't happen. So some of us were pulling people backwards in their wheelchairs with an extra hug around them to hold them in their wheelchairs as we pulled them backwards up those ramps. And I think we were all amazed just at the attitude of people and how it felt like we were all working together as a community. Residents, staff, everyone. So many stories, so many stories. But one of the things that I found too is this community, the Boulder area and surrounding communities. We had, for a while, we had too many volunteers, if you know what I mean. So many people wanted to help, and we didn't know, the coordination of volunteers was an amazing thing. I know one of our vice presidents, Kathy, was, I think I saw her for about 10 days with a clipboard in her hand constantly, just trying to coordinate. And people bringing food and donating food and businesses donating things. It was amazing. Then working to find places for everyone to live. People can't live in the wellness center on mats for a very long time. And the way that the surrounding community rallied to say, we'll make beds, we'll make room. Golden West was amazing. They said, we'll do whatever you need. And 40 of our residents ended up moving over there. But again, to just think about this, we lost the entire first floor of our skilled nursing, which would have been 54 beds on the lower floor, 108 total. All of our assisted living apartments, which was, I believe, 34 people, I'm not sure. And then somewhere around a dozen independent apartments on the garden level where people had to come out. And I don't know the statistics. I'm thinking well over 100 people total were displaced and had to find somewhere to live. And the local skilled nursing facilities, assisted livings, independent living places just said, just get them here and we'll make them feel at home. And they did. So a year later, one of the things we've done is deliver baskets and cards to those facilities just to say, thank you, we couldn't have done it without you. Can any good come out of something like this flood? It was hard on especially those people that had to move. Again, people moved here thinking, this will be my last move. I'm not going to have to move again. This is home. And having to move. So I think the stress on so many of our senior residents was certainly difficult. But they did know that they were cared for. They also knew we wanted them back here. We wanted them back home too. We turned some of our guest rooms, which are just very small apartments. When someone in independent living has family visit, they can use one of those guest rooms for their family to stay in who might be coming from out of town. We turned those into assisted living apartments. We turned meeting rooms, etc., into apartments. And the staff was very conscientious about, okay, if someone's living here but needs a higher level of care, we're going to provide that. So we got as many people back on campus as we could. And now we're rebuilding. We actually are working at turning the flooded lower level of skilled nursing into assisted living and are turning that into apartments. It will help us just get everyone back on campus again. And then flood mitigation is so huge. We have to make sure that this will not happen again. And the city and state have been great. The health department, FEMA. We actually qualified for some help from FEMA because we are a not-for-profit place that provides health care to seniors. So whereas FEMA usually helps individuals, we were able to get some help from FEMA too. But every one of those, worked with us well to say, we have to make sure that flooding won't happen again here. And so the flood mitigation plans are well in effect. And I'm no engineer, I don't know what all they're doing, one of the things I heard is you have to make sure that your place doesn't flood, but that you don't divert water into other places then that would flood, of course. So it's a very complicated process, but it is being done. And I'm hoping, at least before the end of the year, we will have assisted living open again and be able to get everyone back on campus.
Bob, you as the chaplain, were there any outstanding or moments that helped you in that horrible evening to get through that time frame, that you relied on your faith or from others?
Constantly. I think part of being the chaplain is always looking at, what gives your life strength and meaning for each individual. And it's different for each individual. But to see the resources that some of these very long-lived people had leaned on all life long. And it's never clean and easy. It's always, why is this happening? And, what's happening and what's going to happen next? But I always feel that spiritual strength very often comes through community. And so the support of residents of each other, of staff of each other, staff helping residents, and residents supporting staff. I think when in crises is when you really find out what a community is made of and what those individuals are made of. And all kinds of strength. And hearing the stories of people, hearing one of the nurses say, well, there was a guardian angel out there. Well, I've teased Walt about that many times. We've had some good laughs about that. But that was the role he was playing that night, the role of a guardian angel. It will be a night I will never forget, and this may sound funny, but I was so glad I was here. Because some staff wanted to come in and could not get here. But I've been at Frasier Meadows 18 months now, so I guess it was not quite even 6 months that I was here when the flood happened. But I was so glad I was here because, going through a tragedy together, how close it can bring people. And it was an honor to be here.
We are certainly glad you were here. I recall reading in the newspaper a reference to some residents singing.
Oh.
Can you elaborate on that?
There was a woman in healthcare who was very debilitated, needed a lot of personal care, but she was a woman of very strong faith. And she, one of the things that she did was when we had several people just who were in, kind of reclining chairs, lined up in the hallway, and some were sleeping in them and some weren't. Some were very agitated. But this dear woman started singing hymns, and she sang, and it had such a calming effect on people. Her hymns became almost lullabies. And I know our CEO, Tim Johnson, said that he will never forget her singing in the garden, because amidst all the flooding and the confusion, here she was singing about a garden. And he said he was so touched by that. One of the stories that I never told, but I will tell now, is one of the songs she sang is, "My Bonnie lies over the ocean." That was a little ironic, but the way she sang it, it was just so comforting to people. So I found residents ministering to each other in very unique and special ways. And that was a gift that she gave. Now she has moved out and has not been able to come back. We don't have room in skilled nursing for her anymore. But I will never forget her parting gift to Frasier Meadows was her singing.
Do you recall how many days it was before the electricity was able to come back on, and that you were able to have power for the kitchen and the medicines, etc.?
Mm-hmm. It was a process. It didn't just come back on. And in fact, I noticed for a while we had, heavy-duty extension cords running from an area that had power to power other areas. I know in skilled nursing on the second floor that didn't flood, people were eating out in the hallways where the bigger windows were so they could have light while they were eating. And then, you know, those trouble lights, the lights in the little cages were kind of strung along the ceilings. And it was that way for quite a while. You know, just to make sure that the electricity was there for anyone. Oh, for instance, someone who needed an oxygen concentrator or anything like that. That happened immediately, you know, with battery backup and everything else. But it was a long time before the electricity, and I'm just guessing. I think it was a couple weeks before we really had everything up and going again.
What an experience, Bob.
Mm-hmm.
And back to the water, it was a wall of water. So have studies been done to show wherever that water came from?
Mm-hmm.
It seems like it wasn't water coming straight down. It was a wall of water you referred to.
Yeah, we have some geologists here and some other scientists that are residents here at Frasier, and they took it upon themselves to really do a lot of research about it. And again, you know, this is best guess, but a scientific guess is that so much of it just came down from the foothills, just because there was so much water and just came down. And of course gathered in the streams that run through Boulder. But what they're thinking happened here is over on Foothills Parkway, there's a bus station there, and that's kind of a lower area. And they said that started filling with water and actually became a lake. In fact, I heard stories of a couple CU students out there in kayaks while that was, doesn't it sound like college students? It really does, out there on the lake. But that filled and had to go somewhere, and so started coming down Foothills Parkway. Right outside of Frasier Meadows, there's some berms, you know, some dirt and grass, man-made humps out there. And when the water came down Foothills Parkway and got past those berms, it kind of turned into Frasier Meadows, into the parking lot outside of skilled nursing, outside of our healthcare department. And when the parking lot filled with water, that's when it became a wall and came and hit. Now that's my understanding. That's not a scientific explanation, but I think that's kind of a best guess of what happened. You know, what a good thing that came out of this is we're really going to look at the floodplain and make sure that it's something that can't happen, not just to Frasier Meadows, but to the town of Boulder. You know, how can we best make sure that that this doesn't happen again?
Thank you so much, Bob, for sharing a very poignant story. Frasier Meadows certainly did a wonderful job of coming through all of that horrendous time. So I'm so glad you were a particular strong part of that.
Well, thanks. It's been cathartic to be able to talk about it now a year later.
Good.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Good. Thank you.